Hey there. So October's here, October 2024. And in this video, what I'm going to be looking at is the overriding planetary picture. You might say the sort of planetary architecture underneath everything that's supporting us on a day-by-day basis, a week-by-week basis, supporting us every month. Now, each week I do an overview for the week ahead, detailing, I guess, the minutiae of the energetic changes, because I'm including the moon and all of moon's aspects, and then breaking it down and giving you a zodiac forecast, so whether you're an Aries right the way through to Pisces, there is a forecast for you. With this particular forecast, I'm looking not at the minutiae, but more at the big picture. So I'm not really including the moon apart from the new moon, which is actually the annular solar eclipse that's happening tomorrow, and then the full moon happening on the 17th. Because the moon, like I say, it changes all the time. And, I'm really wanting to give the biggest a biggest blown up view of the month ahead, so you can see the natural energy flows coming in and out, and work out how you might want to use them. For instance, there's a few little groups of days, like pairings of days, where all of a sudden there's loads of aspects happening between particular little pockets of planets, and then there's a gap in between, And I think it's worth observing this. And I think you can see it much more easily when you're looking at a bigger overview. Also with this, I'm looking at the kinds of connections that the planets are making. So, last month we had lots of oppositions and square energy, which I think created a lot of frustrations and a feeling of tension, like not being able to flow very easily one way or another. And this month has a really, really strong level of trines, which I really like. So yeah, looking at the planetary picture from as many different angles as possible. As ever, I just want to start by saying thank you to everybody that supports this channel. I really I'm honoured that you're choosing to support the channel in the different ways that you do. It's always a lovely surprise when I get a little message to say that. So you're really giving me the encouragement. And, if you're supporting with your comments and suggestions, I've had people send me little ebooks or big ebooks even that actually add to, bring in an extra form of knowledge that is maybe complementary to astrology. All these different things that are coming into this collective idea of the Feel Good Astrology community. I love it. Thank you so much. You're helping to keep me inspired, in fact. So yeah, don't underestimate how important this is. So I love that. Thank you so much. Okay, so in this month ahead then, what I'm doing is breaking all the planetary pictures down into a week by week basis, and also looking at these little cluster days of big planetary activity. So you can see here, we're already in the manifestation week. We've got the annular solar eclipse tomorrow that I will be talking about a little bit. And there is an actual standalone video about that, including the asteroids that are feeding in to the particular annular solar eclipse. As ever, I think, when we have been inspired and we've been manifesting new ideas and getting excited about things, I automatically notice that what comes next is quite reactionary. If you get lifted up, all of a sudden you're seeing things from a new perspective. And from that new perspective, you'll be making new choices. Now, I think that's one of the reasons why week 2 may be reactionary. Now, it's got a hell of a lot of aspects going on. In fact, on the 13th and 14th of October, we've got 2 squares and 2 oppositions literally happening in those 2 days. And obviously that's in the reactionary week 2. So week 2 is potentially a week where we can use the energy to get moving on our new ideas, our new inspiration, our new mindset, where you've created some possibility for yourself, you can be getting going on it. The squares and oppositions create enough tension for you to get off your backside and to do things. And it also, I think, brings up some of your core resistances as well. So they're never very easy. However, they can really move you from A to B. So I think the week 2 is actually quite important. Week 3, I think, it's the week with the full moon in, and it's got some real sort of strong, passionate energies as well. So I think week 3 is you know, it's not as busy as week 2 and week 4. So week 3, we could learn a little and reflect on our learning. But absolutely, week 4 is the one where we really need to take care of ourselves. You know, on the 22nd, I mean, the 22nd is such a strong day. You know, we've got so many different themes going on, but there's this theme of going deep, deep, deep into our patterns at that time. And then later on in the week, towards the end of it, I really think we're running out of steam a little bit. You know, we need to keep ourselves inspired and really take good care of ourselves. So we've got 2 pockets of intense energy in this last week. And of course, you know, if you're actually based in America, you'll be more than aware that this is the week immediately before the US elections. So lots going on. Yeah, and just to highlight, like there really are like 2 of these pockets of energy in week 4. You know, it's the biggest moment of this month ahead. So before we sort of start looking actually at the planetary breakdowns, I also just want to talk about the ingresses and the retrogrades. So, you know, Mercury's moving into Scorpio in week 2. And then Venus is moving into Sagittarius on the 17th, on the day of the full moon. That's in week 3. And then literally at the start of week 4, we've got the sun going into the sign of Scorpio. So only these 3 ingresses. Obviously, the moon is changing signs every couple of days. But this is kind of interesting. So we've got Saturn retrograde all month, Uranus retrograde all month, and Neptune and Chiron. Then Pluto starts retrograde, but goes direct from the 11th of October. And then Jupiter goes retrograde from the 8th of October. What this means is from the 8th to the 11th of October, which is in our week 2, one of our busy weeks, we have got Jupiter right the way through to Pluto, all retrograde. So that's, you know, our 3 outer planets, our 2 middle ones, and then Chiron, all retrograde. Now, you know, I know there are probably some people out there thinking, oh my God, it's all retrograde. That's going to be terrible. But trust me, this happens pretty much every year. You know, there will be a time when it appears that everything is going retrograde at the same time. And sometimes we might even have Mars or Mercury or Venus thrown in for good measure too. But, you know, what I really see about this is it's a time when we are less able to take action and possibly a little bit tied up in knots. It's a time, I think the retrogrades are times where we are best using our energy to reflect and to recognize what's going on. It takes a little bit longer to focus on what's going on, you know, because the energies aren't really working in the usual way that they would be working. So whereas Uranus is all about creating change and innovation, you know, we might be doing that internally. Like, how are we internally changing and creating innovation for ourselves? Similarly with Saturn, you know, we rely on Saturn in many respects because it gives us shape and form in life, and it creates like rules and regulations and stuff. With Saturn retrograde, you might be turning that energy in on yourself rather than creating something outward with shape and form. You might be looking at the internal programs that you've got running for yourself. And you know, a similar thing happens with, you know, all of the other energies. So it's like we're turning everything insular, inward. We are internalizing things. So I think of this more as internalized change, internalized shifts. You know, this is less about reacting to what's going on out there, but absolutely something really core is going on right here inside you. And I've noticed it, you know, just in this last month, I've just been getting more and more internalized, realizing that the true power of what it is to be alive for me right now is to recognize where I'm powerful in myself. And I think that's actually quite a helpful way to be. You know, I feel actually a lot more inspired since realizing that I have the choice. I have choices. You know, it's very easy when everything is going full steam ahead to get really sort of buffeted around by everything. So yeah, I hope that's helpful, you know, for you to know that. So there's less sort of changes of planets. You know, Mars isn't changing, you know, and obviously we've got some really big shifts next year with all of these, apart from Chiron, actually. So Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto all changing signs within 9 months of each other from November next year, and the North Node will be changing. So this actually to me looks like quite a good reflective pause. And talking about the aspects, we've got really one. Obviously, the moon is making conjunctions as the moon goes around all signs of the zodiac. The moon will conjunct every planet and the nodes. But, in terms of big conjunctions, the only one that we've really got this month is the annular solar eclipse starting on the 2nd, literally tomorrow. It's a deeply, deeply creative purpose and process. And like I said, there's a separate standalone video for it. And this week's forecast, the zodiacal forecasts, I'll put a link in at the end. It is literally on a breakdown as how you can manifest with this energy. So if you're interested in that and you haven't watched it, check it out. But you'll see there's so many more trines this month. I really see, given that we've got Mars in Cancer and that we've also got Saturn in Pisces, Venus is making these lovely trine energies to both of them, and Mercury and Jupiter, we've got this lovely air sign energy as well because of Jupiter in the sign of Gemini. We've got Mercury and the Sun going into trines there. And of course, we've also got Neptune in a water sign as well. So Venus is going into a trine. And then when Venus moves into Sagittarius, she's going to be trining the North Node in Aries. So we've got a lot of beautiful trine energy coming up, which I think is really useful. And they're all in, mainly in the waters and the airs. There's one fire here, but we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 trines in water signs and only 2 airs. So it's mainly watery trines that we've got going on. That's the bulk of the energies. So, the trines are all about flow. And I think that the trines are also about natural talents that we all have and the bringing out of talents. I see that trines really help to facilitate brilliance and to facilitate an easy movement from A to B, like ideas from receiving an idea to delivering an idea. I see them as being collaborative. I see them as being graceful. Now, they don't always do much. Like the trine energy gives us an ease, gives us a sense of well-being, especially in the water signs. I think there's a flow of emotion and a flow of feeling. So maybe this is a month ahead where we may well come into a feeling of serenity and grace. I think that would be really nice. This sense of deep peace is much needed right now, as far as I can see. But we've also got oppositions and squares. And in fact, when you add up, these sort of the energies of the more easy and dynamic energies versus the challenging dynamic energies, I would say on balance, there's more challenging. So the oppositions, the main set of oppositions are to Chiron and Uranus. Obviously, we've also got the full moon, but we always have a full moon each month. So, Chiron is about wounds and attending to what feels a bit sore and when we might feel a bit vulnerable. And Uranus is about bringing in change and innovating and possibly reacting to some kind of shock. So, we've got the Mercury and the Sun in opposition to Chiron, which is very much about how we are identifying with our wounds. Are we separating from our wounds? Do we feel like our wounds are something from the past? Do we feel quite changed by them? Or are we rejecting them or repelling them? I think there's something interesting going on in terms of our triggers. And, with Venus and Mercury and Uranus, I think there's an element of change going on that is affecting the way that we might be relating to others and also thinking. Now, these squares are also interesting. I really see that the squares are going on in the cardinal signs. So we've got Libra and Cancer, Libra and Capricorn, Cancer and Aries, Libra and Cancer, Libra and Capricorn. So there's this very strong energy of cardinal squares, and they're a lot harder to work with, much harder, because they are more dynamic. Okay, they're not fixed. That does create this feeling of a bottleneck of energy, and the mutable squares, you can almost kind of change right out of them. but these cardinal squares are dynamic. So they are creating, I think they are creating change through working them out. So like Mercury and Mars in a square, I talk about this in this week's forecast, the zodiacal forecast. But Mercury and Mars, it's the tension created in these cardinal signs is really getting us to work through what we're thinking about and what we're doing, and why there's tension, why our thoughts aren't being expressed properly or aren't leading to actions, or like when they do lead to actions, why it's so tense. So it's about to create some change for us. So this is really interesting. I think there's a lot of change coming, but we are being reminded that maybe we've got the skills to actually deal with the change that's happening. So yeah, all of these very, very strong oppositional and challenging energies are going to be moving us. And these are the biggest dates. So when I look in terms of the biggest dates, 13th and 14th, I said this is a deep and difficult day, or couple of days with lots of very strong feelings. Like I said, there's 2 squares and oppositions, and we've got Mars square Chiron, which is very sore and ouchy, Sun in an opposition to Chiron. And what that means is we've got a T square between the Sun, Chiron, and Mars being the energy in between. Mars is like one of these pivoting energies. So, the Sun in the opposition to Chiron, they're the opposition. We may well be considering what it is that is making us vulnerable. And then Mars in between as a midpoint is really saying, well, there is a way out of it, and that's to take action. And so this is dynamic, and it could be really helping us to face what has been holding us back thus far. We've also got the trine to Jupiter from the Sun, which I think of as being very helpful. But then this opposition to Uranus from Venus, again, is really emphasizing the dis-ease and also the need to take action. And of course, we've also got Mercury going into Scorpio that day. On the 22nd of October, oh my goodness, we've got Venus in a trine to the nodes, which I think is helpful. Mercury in a trine to Saturn, very helpful. Then Sun square Pluto, and then the Sun going into Scorpio, which have a similar energy. Like Scorpio, one of the rulers is Pluto. So the Sun square Pluto and the Sun going into Scorpio is quite brooding. So it's starting that last week of October with quite a brooding feeling. Even though there are some helpful aspects. So yeah, I do think we have to go deeper, and we're already moving. So I see this as being a very powerful day, actually. And then the 28th to 30th, right at the end of the month, Venus square Saturn, Venus semi-square Pluto, Mercury opposition to Uranus. These are very sort of interesting in terms of power. Pluto and Uranus, if you think we've got plutonium and uranium, as power sources, as these sort of very potent sources of energy. And then Saturn as well, which is giving us our shape and our form. To me, it feels like the way we're relating and the way we're thinking is not in alignment with these things that are creating form in our life and giving us that sense of energy. If anything, it's making us really quite edgy. So maybe we're not using our energy very well. Are we being too forceful? Or are we, I'm not entirely sure. It just feels like there is something really affecting our energy levels. And interestingly, Mars trine Neptune, I think Mars and Neptune, when they're together in a conjunction and in a square in particular, are very much energetic, because Neptune seems to cancel out the Mars energy. And of course, Mars is very much about our physical prowess and our ability to move forwards. Mars in a trine to Neptune, I don't see as so disastrous or deleterious of our energy, but it is creating a softer energy, a desire to take action more in a cosmic way. So, if you are like working out who you are and how you are in terms of working with energy, maybe you're looking at your light codes, I don't know, looking in terms of metabolic health, you can be looking at your whole your whole energy system, your mind body system, from a multitude of different ways and perspectives. But I think the last week is about what energy are you being right now, and how can you either tune into it, expand it. I don't know. I think the important thing is to not feel like there is something irritating the smooth flow of it. I would say the importance around the last 3 days is to look at how you can gracefully soothe and smooth the whole process. So, big dates anyway. They're dates worth putting in your diary. You know, if I was you, I'd be getting my diary out and just double checking what I had going on at those times. Best not to overdo it. You know, don't book in too much around that time. So week 1 then, starting from the 1st, taking us all the way to the 7th of October. I've covered this actually in my weekly update, so I'm not going to cover it here. I've put this in so you can see it, but absolutely go and check out that weekly forecast, where you can also check out the forecast on a zodiacal way. Like, you can look up your sun sign, your moon sign, your ascendant sign, to really work out how to use this manifestation energy. And of course, with the actual annular solar eclipse, there's also going to be a separate video for that. So no need to go here, but let's have a look at week 2. So yeah, as we're going into week 2, from the 8th to the 14th of October, we've created a lot of energy, a lot of uplift behind the scenes. And then, we've got a lot of energy coming up. And in particular, the 13th to the 14th, like, you can see how many things are happening on the 13th to 14th. There's a lot, this square with Pluto, like Venus in an opposition to Uranus, Sun square Mars. But these are the two aspects that really capture my attention, and that is you've got the Sun in opposition to Chiron, and then they're both in a square to Mars, creating this very tough and tight T-square. So this is the chart actually from the 8th of October. So this is all just coming into being. So you can see right the way through the week, what's underpinning it is this Mars Chiron opposition to the Sun, this T-square energy. So that's underpinning it. But you've also got the Venus in a trine to Mars. So where is she? She's here. She's also making a trine. And we've got this lovely grand trine between Venus, Mars, and Saturn that's persisting. Mercury's in a trine to Jupiter. Here's Mercury and here's Jupiter. You'll see the Sun is also in a trine to Jupiter too, which is really nice. That's also coming in. So these are already coming into being, and then they go exact on these particular days, so the 8th and then also the 14th. So, Mercury is in many ways handing off to the Sun. And if you think Mercury is about our thinking, and our words and our ideas that are coming to us, and then the Sun is how we're expressing it, I think that really makes sense. Mercury in a trine to Jupiter is really bringing a sense of healing thoughts, expanding thoughts, fun thoughts, a way of relating to people. I say this in a sort of very social way because they're both in air signs. So this is an airiness, like an exchange between people, this sense of sociability and expansion and sharing as well. I think is also a really big theme here. Like with all of the air signs, I think sharing is really quite easy. So these are really nice. As we're going into the week, yes, we've got this T-square going on, urging us to take actual action where we're feeling uncomfortable with who we are, where we're feeling embarrassed about ourselves, where we feel like there's some old wounds or aspects about ourselves that we're not quite ready to challenge. We're not ready to take the next step. There's something that we want to do, and then as we get to do it, we think, no, I'm not enough. I can't do this. So it's almost like, I think the Mars Sun Chiron T-square is about self-devaluation, and how we can take action to reevaluate ourselves. So we're not like knocking ourselves down now. In fact, this is challenging us to step into our discomfort and to raise our game. So, with these trines to Jupiter, that's really, really helpful. There is something pushing us there. It's feeling good to even challenge where we might have devalued ourselves. It's feeling quite beneficial. Jupiter's also in a sextile to Chiron, which I think is also alleviating some of that. So, with this opposition between Mars and the Sun and Chiron, it does look like Mars, like taking action, is really, really important. But actually, this is a much easier way to use and honor the energies of what we're insecure about versus the energies of where we are right now. And so this is about expansion. So yes, you can take action, and that's likely to really bust open the pattern. But actually, optimism, hope, prayer, being faithful, because I really do think Jupiter has a strong element of faith and belief systems, and also thinking bigger. Like, how could you make this even bigger? Like, if you're worried about writing a book, imagine writing like 3 or 4 books, like a series of books, like this, like take your idea so much bigger. And then when you go back to thinking about the book, it feels like, oh, well, this is just one step in the direction of something much bigger. It's like draw a big line against something, and then what you're actually dealing with tends to look a little bit smaller. So it's playing with proportions and perspective, I think could be really, really helpful. And then, Mercury is going to go into the sign of Scorpio, and Mercury is going to make a square with Pluto, which is going to really intensify feelings, because, we are getting intense in our thinking. So yes, we've expanded ourselves, and yes, we've been challenged to take action. And now, there are some strong transformations taking place and some strong conversations that are likely to come in as a consequence. So yeah, I just think October, in week 2 is really, really helpful. And just note that between the 8th and the 11th, so the 8th until like midweek from whenever it starts. Yeah, I don't know what day the 8th is on, but they are the days when everything is retrograde. They are the days when, yes, you might be about to take action, but maybe just wait until we're on to the 12th. Because between the 8th and the 11th, it just feels like everything is standing still, and everything is about how we can reflect and learn, and hopefully share beyond that. So week 3 then, everything's so important. I just had to highlight it all. I couldn't really cherry pick anything. Venus going into Sagittarius, I think, is going to lighten things up overall. Venus in Scorpio, and by this point, Mercury in Scorpio. And by the end of the month, the Sun will be in Scorpio as well, and that is a time when we are quite intense and quite focused, and possibly a bit pessimistic, a little bit snipey sometimes. It's a time of shadows, and working on the shadows, and I see when Venus comes into Sagittarius, it's about coming back into the light a little bit, even though the time of Sagittarius is right before the winter solstice if you're in the northern hemisphere. But there is something buoyant about the Sagittarian energy. It lifts us up. It wants to aim high and aim ridiculously high, and you may never reach those ideals, but you'll still get much further than you would have done if you hadn't dreamed. So we're coming back into our Pollyanna phase, where we're starting to I don't know, be a little bit wilder, a little bit more wacky, and also a little bit sort of devil may care. The sign of Sagittarius is known as being quite careless and sometimes thoughtless. Like you take action and you fire out loads of different arrows in loads of different directions, and you never really know where you're going, and then all of a sudden something occurs to you. So Venus coming into this sign, I think, is going to make attraction, like whether you're attracting things in through a manifestation or attracting partners, it's making you a lot more I actually think attractive, because you're not like holding on to every possibility. When Venus and Mercury, and like I said, the Sun will be coming into this big old Scorpio time, the Scorpio energy really holds on. I've got Scorpio ascendant, and earlier in my life I got deeply attracted, with like crushes, in my early years. And, if you've got a really strong Scorpio thing, maybe you can like share with me if you went through similar things. But it was so intense, like so completely fixed on really what I wanted. And actually, I think where I've been completely fixed on things, it's never really gone that well. It's almost like what I'm trying to fix on is making me completely repellent. I'm repelling away the things that I would like to bring into my life. Whereas the Sagittarius side of me, my son's in Sagittarius, is much more released and relaxed and a lot more playful and a lot more, oh, well, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And that, I think, makes things really magnetized to you, like life actually wants to come towards you. It's not repelled by you. It doesn't feel that intensity, that intense longing. And maybe that's what it is, because if you're longing for something or wanting something or needing something, by default, you don't have it. So the more you're longing for what you don't have, you're creating that energy of longing in the world that can't ever be delivered, because you're in a state of longing. And therefore, to manifest what you're asking for, you're manifesting a continuous state of longing. Whereas in the sign of Sagittarius, and Venus is such a good attractor of things. Venus is bringing in a sense of carefree, a sense of release, a sense of joy. And of course, that is highly attractive to all sorts of situations, bringing you more joy and bringing you more of an uplift. So, I actually think these two signs like kind of merge together, like the passion and the joy would be an absolute sort of unstoppable kind of combination. So anyway, it's funny we're talking about passion, really. So this is a passionate start. Venus is in a trine to Neptune, which, Venus is the harmonic of love and flow and attraction. And Neptune is a higher harmonic of love. So there is this feeling of love. They're both sexual planets. And then we've got Venus in a sextile to Pluto. Again, Pluto's a highly sexual planet as well. And, the connections between these two and Venus, I think are really dynamic and really quite glorious. And week 3 is quite a slim week. There's not that many big aspects going on between the planets. Like all the sort of bulk of the things that are going on in this week is with the moon. So you could actually spend your time attracting the things, enjoying the things that you're passionate about in life, going to bed early with your partner, going off and making love during the day, whatever works for you, whatever is putting you into that passionate mode, getting your paints out, whatever it is that you love to do it, do loads of it, spend as much time as you can feasting on your passion, like feasting on what lights you up. And then as Venus goes into Sagittarius, and get this full moon, which is quite a strong one actually, because it's at 24 degrees. The sun's going to be here at the tail end of Libra. The moon will pass over Chiron immediately before the full moon. So this reminds me of the total solar eclipse back in April, on April the 8th, when we had the sun and moon and Chiron all together, like exactly all at the same degree. And so this is like the opposition of it, I don't know if that's what it's called. I don't know what other astrologers are saying, but to me, they're like a complementary pair of energy. So what I really think is what was bothering you and what you were feeling quite sore about back in April, 6 months later, how has that developed? How has that shifted? How has that changed? This is quite a quite a strong full moon, and it could bring up some sore points. And that's why I said it's a passionate start, because, as we're coming through the week and coming into that full moon, everyone's getting full moony. We get emotional. We wear our heart on our sleeve, and after being so kind of relaxed about, sharing our emotions and sharing what we're passionate about, we can get ourselves into a bit of a frenzy and kind of make ourselves a bit vulnerable. Like we reveal what we're passionate about. And then, of course, all of a sudden we could get hurt like that. You know, like taking this conversation back to my teenage crushes, you know, the moment somebody knows that, you know, you have a crush on them, you run the risk of being rejected, because if something you're passionate about or excited about doesn't match that kind of intensity, all of a sudden there's a vulnerability, there's a reveal, a revelation of your feelings. Now, this is interesting because back in April, you know, the sun and the moon and Chiron together, it's like, how are we feeling vulnerable? You know, it was a time of very strong emotions. You know, lots of people were writing to me around that time, especially people born around, you know, the sort of like early April time, you know, with their birthdays around that time. They were all really feeling the pinch of that, feeling very exposed and very raw. With the sun over here, we've cultivated a distance from our vulnerabilities. We've been able to hide them. Maybe we've been busy and created lots of great big castles in the sky, in the air. You know, we've been doing our thing for the last 6 months. But we're still reminded that vulnerability still exists. And, you know, are we just going to, you know, like we could keep it and we could recognize that there's something we feel vulnerable about, or we could get to the stage where we think, you know what, I don't want to feel vulnerable about this anymore, you know, and actually hiding it makes me more vulnerable, not less, because then I've got to always keep up this act. Surely the greatest form of healing actually is to come into full transparency, to find the balance of it. And so I really think around the full moon, in terms of lots to learn, we're learning that how we've hidden our vulnerability before probably hasn't worked. And if there is something that feels sore still, are you going to do the same thing again? Are you just going to cover it up from behind the scenes? Are you going to ignore it? Or are you just going to face it? And, you know, face it with compassion. You don't have to do it alone. There's lots of coaches and people around you that might help. There's so much sort of knowledge being freely shared on the internet right now. Audiobooks, all sorts of different things. I mean, we are in a time when if you've got a particular problem, there's hundreds of thousands of bits of advice out there. I mean, some people even go to ChatGPT to get advice. You know, there are so many different ways to start to unpick what it is that ails you. And actually, the funny thing is, once you realize that you know, not only are there so many ways to unpick this, but there are so many other people out there that, you know, if you do go to a forum and come clean about what it is that's going on for you, you'll probably find there's hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people even, feeling very, very similar to you. You know, you're not alone in this. And I think being alone is one of the things that creates vulnerability and isolation, you know. And this is, again, why, you know, the sun is in Libra at this time and the moon is in Aries, you know, and connected to Chiron. You know, when we're keeping our feelings hidden in that very sort of independent and singular sign of Aries, it's very difficult to get any kind of support. But when, you know, we're open in this sign of partnership here, you know, in the sign of Libra, then there's an opening for other people to support you. So it might be that you do need support. So that's why I said it's a passionate start to the week, and also there's lots to learn. There's a way to refine what's going on for you. And then we're in week 4. So week 4, an exhausting week of changes. You can see there's so many things going on. If I just quickly flick back to the other 4 weeks, you'll see how this is so much more intense. I mean, week 2, reactionary, week 1. So you can see that week 2 and week 4 are definitely like the strong ones. But this, I think, is just really exhausting because of what's happening right at the end. You know, we've got this very intense day on the 22nd. You can see the sun is about to move into the sign of Scorpio. It does make a square to Pluto, which is bringing up a lot of power issues. But we've got this lovely Venus trine North Node. So there's the North Node and there's Venus down here in Sagittarius. I think this is giving us quite a pioneering energy where we're feeling quite good. And then Mercury here in a trine to Saturn in Pisces, I think is giving us some structure to our emotions and our desires. So, you know, I actually think these two together, you know, Mercury sort of desiring and wanting to create structures, and out of our thoughts, our emotional thoughts, because in water signs, and then Venus kind of taking our desires and kind of giving them that Sagittarius and Mars kind of flippancy and direction. I think this is quite helpful, you know. So there's a lot going on the 22nd, you know, like an intense moving forwards. And then the 25th, Mars in a sextile to Uranus. This is one of the only sextiles I think I've put in. But I think this is really helpful. You know, Mars absolutely is about taking action. And with Uranus, there's taking action on change, which I love. You know, that really resonates with me. And then we've got Mars also in a trine with Neptune, which is helping us to dream, you know. And yes, it's quite feminine in the way it's expressed. You know, Mars isn't quite so gung-ho. It's a lot more maybe spiritually balanced, maybe calmer. Maybe you're taking action to feel peace and making changes because of it. So these two together are really, really nice. So it feels like right at the start of week 4, you're getting ready to get inspired to make some changes and feeling quite intense about it with this sun perspective. And then, you know, you are making changes to create more peace for yourself. Love that. And then, yeah, at the end of the week, the 28th and the 30th, Venus in a square to Saturn. It's quite lonely. You know, Venus in a square to Saturn, I think can bring up ideas about performance, you know, like, are we enough? You know, do we deserve it? So a lot about this, am I good enough? And oh, I don't deserve that. Really, really come up with Venus and Saturn in difficult pairings. And then Venus in a semi-square to Pluto is interesting. Like, on this, it looks like Venus and Pluto are actually in a sextile, and actually they are at the beginning of the week. They are in a sextile. But as the week progresses, Venus goes into a semi-square. So you've got the feeling of a natural transformation, you know, that there is this you're relating to people in quite a transforming way. But as the week goes on, the way you're relating to people to do with transformation is getting more and more frustrated. So it's really hard, you know. It might be that you're feeling that maybe you're not strong enough to influence people, or not strong enough to have transforming conversations with people, or you might be irritated because when you're having conversations with people, people are trying to influence you and make things, putting a lot of pressure on you, you know. So interesting, Venus square Saturn could also be Saturn older people, or again more conservative people. It's interesting, you know, like the whole idea of politics coming up in these last few days before the American elections. I really think whatever's going on in the world is going to get really polarized around that time. But yeah, Venus, you know, which is our desire to relate to everybody, it feels like it's getting harder to relate to everybody, and that either the avenues that you might normally have are slightly like cut down to you because of the way you're perceiving things, or people are just really, really suspicious of each other. So, I mean, the great news is Venus moves pretty fast. So this won't be, you know, as we go into the following week, you know, Venus is going to be coming out of that square with Saturn, and, you know, we'll be out of that semi-square with Pluto. I mean, that's really helpful. I mean, Venus is going to come into a conjunction with Pluto later on this year, but she'll be moving out of that sort of irritation zone, which will be really, really good. But then the last aspect of this month is Mercury in opposition to Uranus. Now, in the same way as Venus and Neptune from last week, week 3, you know, Venus is the harmonic of love, and Neptune is a higher harmonic of love. You know, Uranus and Mercury, you know, Mercury is the harmonic of your mind and your communication, and your ability to deliver information, packets of information or parcels. It's like a delivery service, and it's very terrestrial. And then Uranus is like the higher harmonic of it, you know, and it could be inspiration, it could be telepathy, you know, like the ideas that we use our mouth and the written word to communicate. And also we use body language, whereas Uranus is a higher harmonic of communication and change and innovation. You know, it's a higher harmonic of Mercury. So you've got the two functions of Mercury, of the mind and communication, in opposition. One and both in fixed signs. So, you know, one, and this is kind of interesting as well, because, you know, the sign of Scorpio is quite traditional. And then Uranus is really not traditional. So it's like you've got a really sort of traditional mindset, and then a really non-traditional mindset sort of in opposition. Interesting. Like if you are somebody who is a channel, and you kind of revel in getting into the flows of information, this could be a really, really strong time for you. And what you might be picking up on is deeply fascinating and possibly information that we all need to hear. I do think this could be the energy of revelations coming out, you know, that there is something deeply revelatory going on. You'll also notice that as we're coming into this week, there's a Yod here, although that's actually not a planet, that's the vertex. So, but there's a lot of these inconjuncts and quincunxes, if that's what you call them, you know, and there's one here, an actual real one. So that's Uranus and Neptune down to the Sun, which is interesting, you know. And you know, I did a show about yods a while back. You know, the yods are like holding two ideas that just don't come together, they don't work together, but trying to, you know, how do you hold these different ideas that don't share, you know, they've got nothing in common. You know, like if we look, you know, Neptune is in a water sign, Uranus is in an earth sign, and the Sun is in an air sign. So there's like, you know, and one is fixed, one is mutable, and one is cardinal. Like the three planets in these layouts are so foreign to each other. They're just not really working together. So it's, how do you hold it all together, and how can you integrate what's going on? So I do think week 4 for this reason is really, really exhausting. You know, how can we integrate what's going on for us? So there you go. There are some of my thoughts for the month ahead. I hope you found them useful. If I can be of any help to you, then please do get in touch. All of my details are below in the description field. Simply just go into the description field, and if you want to connect with me, there's a whole heap of ways you can do that. But anyway, have a great month ahead. Don't forget to check out the weekly forecasts, where I will talk about all of this on a week-by-week basis, but according to your sun sign. So there you go. Have a great one, and catch you real soon. Bye for now.